We're starting to get to the root of all this fear, and thankfully there were no spiders crawling out of bodies in this episode of Teen Wolf, but there was that body with no face, and our supernatural pals might be outed. Let's break down Season 6, Episode 13, right here on What Happened. Hello there, you lovely people, Lisa here, and welcome back to another Teen Wolf recap, all about the episode called After Images. Now, I won't lie, this episode did feel pretty slow, but I'm actually okay with it because I think everything is now starting to really come together, and we're learning more about what the real threat in Beacon Hills is. Also, in case you missed it, this episode is directed by none other than Tyler Posey. Let's kick this recap off with Melissa and Arjun. So the last time these two were together on screen, they shared a pretty steamy kiss. However, since then, Arjun ran off to deal with his business, and it seems like neither called each other, making things a tad bit awkward at first when they're together on this episode. So Melissa is at the morgue at night by herself. Probably a place I would not want to be, even in the middle of the day in work hours with lots of people around. Like dead bodies? No thank you. Anyway, she's trying to collect a tissue sample from that gross, faceless body that was recovered from the school in the last episode. Yeah, you know, the one that we still don't really know where it came from since those spiders attacked that Aaron kid, yet magically he's still walking around. So back to this body though. Melissa attempts to get near it to take a tissue sample, but when she gets near it, the lights start flickering, she gets scared, things go dark. Yeah, shiz just is scary. Melissa's freaked out, so am I. So who does she call? Arjun. She enlists him to help her, and she sends him in to get the sample, but yeah, this thing freaks him out too. There's even a point when the body bag next to that body starts breathing. Yeah, I would have booked my ass out of that place and said, here's a scalpel, Melissa, you have fun. Arjun though sticks around and ends up having to point a gun at the body while Melissa gets the tissue sample because, you know, teamwork. This body's causing all types of fear and terror. The only way they can do it is together. Now during this time, Melissa does mention something about noxious smells and infrared sounds causing fear. Melissa then runs tests on the tissues, and when she looks at it under the microscope, she finds something pretty alarming. The tissue's pretty blank. Not pretty blank, it is blank. There is no DNA, there is no cell structure, there is nothing.
Say what?
Because both are so freaked out, Arjun and Melissa go back to her house and he gives her a gun for protection. Arjun mentions to Melissa that he doesn't know if it's bodies causing the fear, but maybe they're amplifying it because they both can still feel the fear and the presence. Then they finally address the elephant in the room. As Arjun is about to leave, they're discussing whether or not to call each other if something goes wrong. Then Arjun says he should have called, and Melissa's like, oh, I should have called too. They then get their faces as close as you can get without actually kissing, and it seems like they're about to make that move when Arjun ruins the moment saying, I should go. But then Melissa just grabs his arm and is like, you don't have to, you can stay. And I'm kind of betting that Arjun stayed. Next, let's talk about Lydia, Mason, and Corey, and that creepy kid Nolan. So Mason was pretty affected by finding that dead body in the shower last episode, so much so that he doesn't want to stay at home alone, so he asks Liam if they can have a sleepover, which totally catches Liam off guard because they haven't had a sleepover since they were like 10, so Liam knows something is wrong. Mason tells him that he can't get that image of the body out of his head, and it's not quite like an after image, it is like 5 million times worse. He's having palinopsia, which means that the image is basically staying with him and he sees it again and again and again, and then bam, he sees it behind Liam in the bedroom. Now I actually love this scene because I really do love the Liam and Mason friendship. It is basically Styles and Scott 2.0. I love it. I would totally actually watch a spin-off following these two. While Liam heads off to go with Scott to find Brett, Mason heads to the school to find Corey and fill him in about everything. They go to Lydia for help in trying to find Brett, and they're in the chemistry lab as Lydia tries to initiate a premonition. Now hopefully this is going to help them find Brett. Now it ends up working as Lydia scribbles down a bunch of stuff in foreign languages and Roman numerals, and they discover that it all means the number 68. But what is the significance of that? Side note, is Beacon Hills High like always open? These kids are always at this school in classrooms late at night, roaming around, causing trouble. There's always these late night study sessions in the library. I don't think I've ever seen a high school do that. Maybe this is why Beacon Hills has so much trouble. After learning that she needs to figure out what 68 means, Lydia sets off on her own to the side of her first premonition school hallway, while Mason and Corey go to the library to wait. Now Lydia's trying to figure out the significance of 68, so she's like counting 68 steps, and then she goes to locker 68, which is the only one with a red lock, but there's nothing inside. Now when we see Lydia slam the door closed, we're all of a sudden in the library seeing Nolan wake up. Now, are these things connected? Did Nolan wake up because he heard that locker slam? And if so, how? Is he actually human, or is there something more to him? Nolan gets up and then looks over the balcony at Corey and Mason down below, and then all of a sudden, that Aaron kid, who I don't think is actually Aaron, shows up and says to Nolan, "So you've seen it too," as they're looking down below. Aaron then says, "Do you want to be sure?" Aaron, what nonsense are you putting in little Nolan's head? I think it's the word of the season. Fear. Nolan then goes down to Corey and Mason's table and starts rambling about biology and if organisms and DNA can change in front of your eyes and if things can be two things all at once, yada yada yada, while the camera gets closer and closer to Nolan's face, and then his eyes start bugging out and he starts talking kind of creepy and weird, and it just starts to creep me out, and it just looks like he has all the makings of a serial killer here. Then he just grabs his pen and stabs Corey in the hand, causing a mini little geyser fountain of blood to rush out in the middle of the library as a ton of people are watching. So obviously this draws everybody's attention. Nolan is like, "Yeah, look at his hand, it's healed," and Aaron is just watching slyly from above. Nolan then grabs his pen that has Corey's blood on it and walks out of the library, and I'm thinking he's going off to maybe like do some tests with that blood or give it to somebody. But before he can do that, he bumps into Lydia in the hallway. As he walks away, Lydia sees the number on the back of his sweater. It happens to be 68. Ding, ding, ding. Turns out Lydia's premonition wasn't really about Brett. Sorry, Brett. All things are leading to Nolan right now. Lydia goes up to Nolan though, thinking it's still about Brett, so she asks if he knows Brett, where he is, and Nolan's just kind of like, "I don't know a Brett." Nolan then looks in Lydia's eyes and basically goes, "You're one of them, aren't you?" And then like rushes off with that pen in his hand. Lydia then meets back up with Corey and Mason to fill them in, and she says Nolan wasn't trying to hurt Corey, he was trying to expose him. It was a test. And well, it worked, because everybody that keeps walking by the three of them keeps giving them the weirdest looks. Now Lydia, Corey, and Mason, they figure out that Lydia was wrong about her premonition being about people turning on each other. It's actually people turning on them, and Lydia thinks that it's already started. Now since Lydia's premonition didn't really have to do with Brett, what's going on with Brett? Well, that poor guy is still injured, running through the woods away from Monroe and Gerard. Now we get a really kind of cringeworthy, painful scene, like cringeworthy just because I feel his pain, as he smashes an arrow, that arrow that's sticking out of him, into a tree in order to push it out his back so he can get it out of him, and the blood's going everywhere. It's kind of at this point that I'm glad that there's a dark filter on the show, because I think if I had seen that blood gushing out of that wound, I would have... Brett, I gotta say, is one tough dude, and he's trying to lose these hunters, and he's leaving some clues on his way so that others who he knows are going to come after him can find them. But hopefully the hunters don't figure them out. Now Monroe, she is probably one of the most annoying hunters ever. And by hunters, I also just mean characters. She's impatient, keeps questioning Gerard, asking why they're doing certain things, and all Gerard, he's just over here like with his patience being like, you know, slow your roll, it's all gonna work out. He also throws out a Sun Tzu quote, "The greatest victory is that which requires no battle." So I'm guessing Gerard is the one that left the knife and the quote in Monroe's office. Like, has he been following her for a while? Has he been planning to recruit her? Like, how did she know to go to Beacon Hills? They then come to what Monroe thinks is the end of the trail, but Gerard, being the all-knowing hunter that he is like, you know where wounded animals go to hide? Underground. Now, if you thought Monroe was annoying in this episode, there's a character who just slightly beats her out for being more annoying, and that's Brett's little sister, Lori. I don't know, maybe I'm the only one that was annoyed by her, but she really annoyed the crap out of me. So she has found Brett's bloody lacrosse stick in the parking lot because she hasn't heard from him, she went looking for him. So she shows up at Scott's house with it and tells him Brett's missing, she needs help to find him. We then follow Liam, Scott, Malia, and Lori as they go through the woods to try to find Brett before Gerard and Monroe can get to him. Lori ends up finding a little rock tower that Brett left behind as a clue, so then they know where he is. They head down to the tunnels, but unlucky for them, Gerard and Monroe have figured it out also, and they are down there as well. So our pals learn that Brett has been poisoned, so they have to move even faster. Scott and Malia are more like, we need to be smart about this. They're moving a little slower, trying to think things through, while Lori and Liam are acting pretty recklessly, just wanting to get to Brett as fast as they can. And they cause some pretty big mistakes, as Liam ends up letting out, a roar or a howl to let Brett know that they're there, but it ends up tipping off Gerard and Monroe. Then Lori goes off and sets off a tripwire, causing Scott to get blasted in the stomach with like a spiked pipe. Now Scott's pretty hurt, so Malia stays behind with him as Lori and Liam run off to find Brett. Now Scott figures out that these hunters aren't actually the amateur hunters they thought they were. He's sitting on the ground wounded. He looks at the trap that they set off and realizes that whoever set these off has been around. They've known these tunnels inside and out, probably longer than our faves have. A light bulb then goes off in his head, and he's like, oh, who are the last hunters that we saw down here? It's Arjun and Gerard. And then basically they realize that all signs point to evil Gerard, and that Liam and Lori are probably walking right into another one of his traps. Now this is when we start to really see the beginning of Scalia. Malia is trying to take Scott's pain, but it's not working. She's then like, we should have called Styles, and Scott's like, no, we promised we wouldn't call Styles, we don't want to get him involved. And Malia's sitting here thinking, Styles would want to know what's going on, he'd be mad if we didn't tell him. And Scott's like, no, he'd be mad if we called him. It's a lot of back and forth. It gets kind of confusing. And, Scott's like, I don't want to call Styles because we almost lost him last time. And then Malia's like, yeah, I almost lost him, and now I'm gonna lose you. And then Malia quickly tries to cover what she just said by going, I mean, all of us will lose you. You know what I mean. And then, though, romantic music sort of starts to play underneath them as Scott is, kind of passing out. But as he's doing it, he says, like, I think Styles would be okay with us. And now Malia is kind of confused because she's like, wait, what are we talking about? What did you mean? Malia then puts her hand on Scott's face and is able to actually take away his pain, and he wakes up, but he asks what happened. They then kind of stare at each other for a second, but then realize, oh crap, we gotta go save Liam and Lori, so they get up to run through the tunnels. Liam and Lori, they're still running for Brett, and they run right through the crosshairs of Monroe's gun, but before she can pull the trigger, Gerard pushes the barrel out of the way, and he explains to her that they are actually building an army to hunt them all. They're not after just one werewolf, so they have to be patient. Liam and Lori eventually do find Brett, but he is in real bad shape, and then more traps start going off. Liam goes to take care of the rest of what he thinks are the hunters, while Lori and Brett try to find a way out. And they eventually do, up a ladder and out of a manhole. But you knew it really wasn't going to be good with them climbing up that ladder. They climb out. Liam does not get to them in time because he realizes this has to be a trap. And, well, Lori and Brett hold hands as they get plowed over by a truck that was waiting for them. Liam then wolves out, does a pretty spectacular jump out of that manhole. But sadly, Brett looks like is a goner, as Lori also says she can't take away his pain. And then I'm assuming she dies on his chest. So now I kind of feel bad for calling Lori annoying since she kind of met her fate. Liam then lets out a heartbreaking howl as more cars and pedestrians start gathering around them and staring at him. Now the driver of this truck that killed Lori and Brett gives a nod in the distance to Gerard and Monroe. And Monroe is impressed that Gerard set this whole thing up. Gerard then tells her everything is a lesson, and the best way to build an army is through, keyword, fear. The camera also highlights the street where this is all happening. It's called Muse Avenue. So what exactly is the significance of that? Okay, so basically whatever is really spreading this fear is doing it by exposing the supernatural and making the humans afraid of them, which in turn will make them want to hunt and kill them. But there's obviously some other force working here as well, right? Something that was controlling all those spiders, that is kind of controlling everything, that whole body snatching Aaron situation. We also still don't know what was released by the wild hunt that the hellhound Halwyn was after, but whatever it was, all of this is connected in some way and big enough to draw these new hunters and Gerard back to town. So someone or something just really wants every supernatural creature dead. Now let's take a look at the quick promo for the next episode.
Next on Teen Wolf.
Just convince them that you're a regular kid. I'm not. The entire lacrosse team is looking for you. They're blocking the exits.
Gerard is recruiting new hunters and he's murdering our friends.
What if you're the only one that can stop this?
What if I don't want to?
What do I tell Scott?
You tell him to run.
Well, it looks like our faves are kind of trying to lay low and pretend like they're normal, but I don't think it's gonna work. Okay, so like I said, the episode did drag. The season is off to a pretty slow start, but I think now everything here on is going to kind of pick up and move forward. Now that we know what Gerard's motive is, and that the supernatural are starting to get exposed and people are after them. I do have to give kudos to Tyler Posey. I think he did a great job directing this episode. He had to pull some pretty heartbreaking things out of the actors in this, and I think it helped that they were so comfortable around him. What else? I'm also still not quite sure how I feel about Scalia quite yet, but I'm kind of for Arjun and Melissa, so I'm really hoping that works out. Now it's that time to hit me up in the comments down below with all your theories and thoughts about this episode, your favorite parts, your least favorite parts. You know, R.I.P. Brett and Lori. What do you think is the significance of, Muse Avenue? Is Nolan actually human, or is he maybe something else? I think I read one website think maybe he's a banshee or something because of the whole locker thing and Lydia. I don't know. We're going to have to wait and find out. But in the meantime, you can click right over here to get the latest casting news for Riverdale and 13 Reasons Why Season 2. Don't forget to subscribe because I'll be back here next week talking about Teen Wolf. As always, I'm Lisa. Thanks so much for watching.